Hello, everybody, and welcome to biology. Happy Monday. Here is your lesson for today. We are starting a new unit called the chemistry of life. And so we are not in chemistry class, obviously. We're going to be focusing on how chemistry is related to biology and the chemistry that we need to understand for biology in order to get these units down. So hopefully you guys are with me today and we will get started here. So this is just a concept I want you guys to be thinking about because I'm going to circle back to this question and I'm going to have you guys respond to it. It says a group of students were discussing the elements found in the human body. There's 4 students and each of them has a different opinion. So I want you to listen and figure out which one you most closely align with. It says Marco thinks that hydrogen is the most common element found in the body because it bonds with carbon and oxygen. Eli says oxygen is the most common element found in the body because our bodies are mostly water. Jose says calcium is the most common element found in the body because our bones need calcium. And Benjamin says that carbon is the most common element found in the body because all life on Earth is carbon-based. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about this, and I'm going to have you guys form your opinion at the end of the lesson as well to see who you agree with and why. Before we get too much further, here's our KUD for this lesson. We want to know the difference between atoms, molecules, and compounds. We want to understand the importance of the element of carbon. And what we want to do is use models to help visualize how elements are recombined to form different products. So we're going to kind of be diving into some of this new vocabulary. So when we think of the word atom, I'm wondering what you guys are thinking of. I feel like for the most part, you guys know what an atom looks like. You're used to seeing atoms based on their presentation in movies and in textbooks and things like that. I want to bring up for you guys a picture of an atom, and this will kind of get your brain flowing a little bit. So kind of start visualizing in your head, start coming up with a list of things that remind you of an atom. We're going to be diving into this just, briefly grazing the surface of what an atom is, okay? So when we think of atom, this is kind of what we're thinking about here. We're thinking about an atomic structure. We see electrons, neutrons, and protons. We're not going to be diving into the details of if what a proton is, what a neutron is, what an electron is. That's for chemistry. But I want you guys to see how this is important in understanding what we're talking about today. So the reason this is important is, again, because not that we have to understand what an atom is to understand the chemistry of life, but we do need to understand how it applies and how we can connect those dots together. So let me just got a lot of screens going up here. So here's the difference, because these words I feel like are used often interchangeably, so I want to nip this in the bud right now and make sure that you guys understand the difference in these terms. So when we're talking about an atom, we're talking about the smallest object that retains the properties of an element. Some examples you might have for an atom would be carbon, a carbon atom, one single carbon atom, one single hydrogen atom, okay? So you can't get much smaller than the carbon atom itself, than the hydrogen atom itself, all right? A molecule, however, is 2 or more atoms of an element that are chemically joined together or bonded together. You'll see in your content for Unit 2, there are some explore readings that you can do on your own. They're not assigned. There is one that's about chemical bonds that you can see how molecules are bonded together. An example of a molecule would be O2. O2 is an example of something that is used often for breathing, if you knew that. Oxygen, 2 molecules of oxygen. And so oxygen in the air that we breathe is a molecule, okay? A compound is 2 or more different atoms of an element that are chemically joined together. And so when we're talking about 2 or more different atoms, this is when we're talking about something like H2O, which is water, and more of those types of different things coming together with molecules of hydrogen and molecules of oxygen coming together. So with this said, there's a little caveat down here that says that all compounds are molecules, but not all molecules are compounds, because a molecule technically is 2 of something joined together. but a compound cannot be a molecule. A molecule cannot be a compound, sorry. So it's a little bit tricky. So with that said, I put together this quick graphic for you guys to just help you out with what connects to what. So remember, an atom is the smallest object that retains the properties of an element. So we're going to connect our top word to our middle definition here. We have a molecule, which is when we have two or more atoms of an element, the same element, chemically joined together. And then we have a compound, which is two or more different atoms of an element chemically joined together. So this is basic vocabulary that we need to know in order to get through this unit. What we really want to focus on in this lesson is carbon. Okay, carbon, if you guys know, it's on the periodic table. It's represented by the letter C. It has 6 electrons, which we're going to only dive, like I said, we're going to graze the surface of chemistry here today. So with that said, between element or an atom, a compound, or a molecule, because remember, an atom and an element are very similar. Atom, compound, or molecule, which is it? Think about it for a second. If you said it's an atom or an element, you are correct. Remember, think about it, the periodic table of elements. It is an element on its own. It's not connected to anything else. It's not connected to itself. It's not connected to anything else. So just looking at a carbon atom, it is an atom or an element on its own. Now, carbon has 6 valence electrons. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sorry, 6 electrons total. But it has 4 valence electrons. And that word valence is just referring to the outermost shell. And so if you look at the atom, like I said, I'm not here to teach you chemistry. There are these orbitals that exist around a carbon atom that hold the electrons. Our first orbital here can only hold up to 2 electrons, but our second orbital here can hold up to 4 electrons, okay? So when I say 4 valence electrons, I'm talking about these 4 electrons that are on the outside of the element. The reason this is important is because having 4 valence electrons allows carbon to bond easily with other atoms because it has 4 unique places to bond. Now, I said previously, just now, that the first orbital can only hold 2 electrons, but the second orbital can hold up to 8. So that's what this picture is referencing. It's referencing how many electrons can be held in each shell. So the valence electron, again, is going to be on the outermost shell of the element. Okay, so let's look at this in practice. It says, which statement best explains why a carbon atom can bond with itself easily? It forms hydrogen bonds, it's an organic element, it has 4 valence electrons, or it is an ion. Well, let's do process of elimination. I haven't even mentioned the word ion, so I'm going to eliminate answer choice D. I haven't talked about organic yet, so I'm going to eliminate B. It says it forms hydrogen bonds or it has 4 valence electrons. Well, I think in general it's just more important that it can form bonds with anything. So C in this case is going to be the correct answer. Those 4 valence electrons allow for a lot more bonding to occur between any element. Okay. All right, there's a carbon video that I'm going to link into your course, onto the course plan with this presentation, I should say, that I would love for you to watch, okay? It's a quick video, about 1.5 minutes long, and it's just gonna go over some, it's gonna answer some of these questions. How many other atoms can carbon link up with? Well, we kind of already answered this, understanding how many valence electrons it has, so hint, hint, think about that. What shapes can carbon make? And I've also kind of included them here on this slide for you. And amino acids are ingredients for what? Okay, so we're going to be kind of diving into how carbon plays a role in this whole life cycle once you guys understand the basics of why we need to know about carbon in the first place. So remember, why is carbon important? Okay, this is what we're going to really hone in on. All life that's matter-based is carbon-based. So basically, life in general is based on carbon. It is composed of carbon. This is why we're focusing on it for biology. Carbon helps make life happen, okay? And there's a lot of different life sources out there. And it is the most common element in the universe. All right, so we're going to really start focusing in on carbon. Hopefully you're picking up on that. All right, as we're talking more about carbon, something we're going to discuss now is organic versus inorganic. And these are terms related to carbon itself as an element. When we say something is organic, we're not talking about the food you have in the grocery store that might be a little bit healthier because it has no pesticides or things like that. Organic in the terms of biology is completely different. Organic is going to refer to anything that contains carbon or comes from a once living organism. These tend to be larger molecules. So when we're saying if something is organic or not, an example of an organic element in life, I guess, is those foods. Any type of food would be typically classified as organic under this definition. You are organic. The plants outside are organic. Zebras are organic. And you could just name anything that is life-based. And that would be organic, okay, because it contains carbon. When we talk about something that is inorganic, it does not contain carbon, and these tend to be smaller molecules. So an example could be water. We know water is H2O, so that would be inorganic. We know air, oxygen, is inorganic. We know that nitrogen gas is inorganic. So basically anything that you know isn't carbon-based is going to be referred to as inorganic. So with that said, let's do a quick follow-up question. It says, which statement is true of all organic compounds? They all contain nitrogen, they all contain carbon, they all are classified as carbohydrates, or all are hydrophobic. Okay, let's do process of elimination again. I haven't mentioned the word hydrophobic, so I'm going to eliminate that answer twice. We haven't necessarily talked about carbohydrates yet, but we will, but I'm going to eliminate it now. I did talk about nitrogen and I did say carbon, but I specifically said that nitrogen, especially nitrogen gas, would typically be classified as inorganic because there are no carbon molecules attached to those nitrogen molecules. So in all organic compounds contain carbon. That's our correct answer for this slide, B. Another follow-up, it says, how is an organic compound different from an inorganic compound? Inorganic compounds contain oxygen atoms and hydrogen atoms. Well, that's possible. Photosynthesis is responsible for organic compounds. Okay, organic compounds contain carbon, oh, sorry about my typo, carbon atoms bonded to other atoms, or organic compounds come from only non-living things. Well, we know that organic comes from living things, so I'm going to eliminate D. We haven't really talked about photosynthesis, so I'm going to eliminate B. And then we're down to inorganic compounds contain oxygen and hydrogen, or organic compounds contain carbon atoms bonded to other atoms. Well, I know for sure that organic has to contain carbon. Inorganic compounds can contain lots of things outside of oxygen or hydrogen, so that's too specific. So the correct answer here is C, that organic compounds contain carbon atoms bonded to other atoms. Okay, here is your exit ticket for today over our brief conversation on carbon. Again, make sure you go and watch the carbon video that is on the course plan underneath this presentation. There's also going to be a link for a Padlet that I need you to complete as well as your exit ticket for today. So back to our conversation between our four friends. I want you to go to the Padlet activity, and you'll see that there's 4 columns on the Padlet, one for Marco, one for Eli, one for Jose, and one for Benjamin. What I want you to do is I want you to add a post underneath the person that you agree with here. Do you agree with Marco that it's hydrogen? Do you agree with Eli that it's oxygen? Do you agree with Jose that it's calcium? And do you agree with Benjamin that it's carbon? Just pick one. I want you to use your first initial and your last name, and I will give you bonus points towards your first quarter grade if you correctly answer me by telling me who you agree with and why. Please do not say, I agree with Eli because oxygen is the most common element. That's what he said. Tell me what you think. Tell me what helped you get there, okay? And then I will, again, give you bonus points for that. I've put all of these prompts on the Padlet so you don't have to come back to the video to see who said what. All of these explanations are already on the Padlet for you. All right, guys, with that said, I will have a video up for you guys for tomorrow, and you have a quiz for tomorrow to complete before I come back on Wednesday and we talk about you are what you eat. Have a great rest of your Monday, and I will see you tomorrow.